How's it going, everybody? Today I'm going to show you just a couple of really easy ways how to grow potatoes in containers. So for a lot of people, they may not have access to open ground and they want to grow potatoes because, well, for us here in Ireland anyway, it is one of the most popular crops, but it's something that most people use. It's really fun for growing with children when you open up and you pull out the stalks of potatoes and then they find all these potatoes underneath. It's almost like a treasure trove underneath the leaves. So it's a really good thing to do with children, and a lot of people want to grow. But if you don't have open ground to plant into, there's lots of ways you can do it. So you can grow in any type of container really. So just to show you a few examples, so this is just a standard black tree pot. The minimum size pot that you can use is kind of 30-35 centimeters. This is just a bigger version of it. You can also use something, so there's no real cost in these. If you have talk to a nursery, you can get these, or if you have an old compost bag, just turn it inside out. You can also use the heavy duty shopping bags with the double handles on it. It's a really good thing once it's pretty big size. And here I'm using, this was actually a nesting box for our hens. You see here on the front where the hole was cut out and we had the lid on it, the hen used to come in and lay the eggs in here. We don't use these anymore, we use a different nesting box now. So these are lying around and I don't really have a use for them. So I'm just showing you that you can literally grow potatoes in anything. The key with them is to start with a minimum pot size of 30-35 centimeters, as I said, but then you can go upwards from there and any size after that. Ideally, but it doesn't have to be, if the outside is black, that's a big help because it helps the sun soaks into it and the pot and the compost get warmer. So basically, the potatoes get a chance to kick off a lot quicker. To get started, I would always recommend, particularly if you're a beginner, to start with first early potatoes. Now, first early potatoes, there's lots of varieties of them. They're basically the first to mature. So they're typically planted the earliest as well, but they are also the first to mature. And they normally need 100 days to maturity. The variety that I'm going to use here, just for showing you, is a variety called Sharps Express. It's one of the best known varieties, a really good quality potato. Suitable for boiling, mashing, chipping. It's suitable for most types of cooking. And the key with it is to start off with all of your pots or your bag or whatever container you're using, is to start off with, fill the compost about a third of the way up. Now, it can be any quality composts. I happen to be using topsoil mixed with organic matter and some grit. But literally it can be anything. It can be a multi-purpose compost, it can be garden soil, it can be any good quality compost. So you fill it a third of the way up. For a 30-35 centimeter pot, the most you could put in would be 3 seed potatoes or 3 tubers. And then as you go up along, for every 10 centimeters extra in diameter, you can add an extra potato. For something like the bag, you'd be typically, now that's a small compost bag, but you can typically put 3 in here. And as I say, for the old nesting box, I'm going to go with 6. Now, which is might be chancing it a little bit there, might be a bit too many, but we'll give it a go. Should be fine. The beauty for anyone growing in containers is that you have a bit of flexibility. So you can start them off in your conservatory if you're allowed, or you can put them into a greenhouse. But you don't have to leave them in there. So you can leave them in here to get started, to get a bit of heat into them for the first couple of months. And then once you know the risk of frost has passed, you can easily pick them up and bring them outside. And they'll do better outside once the temperatures have rose. To plant them, it's really simple. We've already filled a third of the way up with a good quality compost. Now, I haven't pre-chitted these, and chitting basically means that you've left them somewhere for the sprouts to grow on them. It's a little bit of a help, but it's not essential that you do that. So these ones haven't been done. And Sharps Express variety, so I just basically pop them in, just slightly prise them into the compost, but not really deep. I go 3 in here. This guy I'm going with 5. Might be a little bit too many as well, but it's quite deep, so it should be okay. For the little compost bag, just going to put 3 in here. And I have 6 just placed in here. So basically what you've done now is you just barely secure them, barely push them down into the compost. And then what you're going to do is you're going to cover them with about 2 inches of compost on top, and then you're going to leave them. So just literally fill back in on top and give them a little bit of a water, and then leave them somewhere nice and warm. What will happen then as you go along is that the potatoes will start to sprout, and they'll send a straight sprout upwards. The key here is to protect those sprouts from frost. So what we're going to do is, every time the sprouts come up about 2 inches, you're going to put in more compost and literally cover that sprout again. You're going to continue that process. The first time that the sprout comes up, it'll probably only be 1 or 2 sprouts, but eventually you'll see 4, 5, 6 sprouts coming up. Just continue to fill in the compost around them. Every time the sprouts appear, cover them back in until eventually you're less than just a few centimeters from the top of the pot. Don't fill it right to the brim, because when you're watering, you don't want the water to flow over, you want the water to stay in. So that's basically it. You keep earthing them up, and that's what it's called, is earthing up. The reason we do that is twofold. So your potatoes are down here, your seed is down at this level, and we want to have lots of compost below it, which we have, and we want to have lots of compost above it. That means that the sunlight is not going to get onto your eaten potatoes, so they won't turn green. But it also means that you're going to get that frost protection, and if you move them outside, you're not going to get crows or anything like that that are rooting at them. So basically keep filling them in all the way to a couple of centimeters from the top. Water them regularly, don't let them dry out. But other than that, you should have within sort of 100 days. So for now, this is the 3rd week of March. These should be ready for harvest pretty much at the end of June. And that's really, really simply how you can grow potatoes in any container. As I said, black is the colour that I have on all these, purely for the purpose of soaking up sunlight, but it's not essential. It can be any colour, it doesn't really matter. But it is a little bit of a help, just the black colour. You can use old trugs, old buckets, compost bags turned inside out. There's lots of things that you can use. So even if you don't have a big space, whether it's a balcony or anywhere like that, you can easily grow potatoes in containers. So that's the little demo. Hope you found it helpful. And until the next time, happy gardening.